In the world of mics, we have three main types. We've got this, which is a Shure SM58. This is a dynamic mic, and this is what you would have on stage. You'd sing into it, stick it in front of a guitar amp, brass players, everything. They're really tough. You can throw them out the back of the truck, and they'll still work. In the studio, you want a little bit more fidelity and a bit more breathiness and perhaps a slightly flatter frequency response so that you can record things accurately. For that, you might use something like this. This is the AKG C414, a fantastic mic. In every mic locker on earth, you will find one of these. However, there is a third type, and that's the ribbon mic. Now, that's this one here. This is the Coles 4038. I'm going to talk about this one today because it's really rather special. Let's have a look. Now, it started life in 1953, 68 years ago, and it's actually remained unchanged ever since in its design. Now, when you buy something like this, you do need something else to go with it. That is, something that will raise the actually very low output level of the mic to something that your average audio interface or mixing desk will be able to handle. So I bought a cloud lifter, which is a little preamp that's in line. It also stops phantom power going to this, because if you supply phantom power to this, that's the end of your mic. Now, the ribbon, it means exactly what it is. It's just a ribbon that vibrates in sympathy with your vocals or your violin or whatever it is. Now, I bought this because it's the only mic that's actually made my violin ever sound like a violin. However, for vocals, it's rather nice as well. Now, I'm going to turn 90 degrees and I'm going to say a phrase, and you will hear what's called the friendly voice of the BBC, which is the Coles 4038. This is London. This is London. Now, when you listen back to this, at the moment you're listening to my narration on the 414 here. You'll hear that there's much, much more body with the Coles. It's quite friendly, it's quite rounded tone. Not only that, but also the ultra top end, it's not really as capable as the 414, getting frequencies above about 14 or 15 kilohertz. However, that's quite a good thing, because actually my violin, I don't want all the treble and all the sort of top end of the bow and the string to actually come across on my recordings. There is a difference between this mic and this mic as well in terms of the pickup pattern. You can set these to be figure of 8, the 414, at the moment it's cardioid, but the Coles 4038 is figure of 8 only, or bidirectional. So it'll actually pick up sounds behind it as well as in front of it, rejecting sound to the side. So actually when you use this in a studio, you've got to make sure that the room is actually sympathetic to that, because you can actually get sort of slapback and various other little issues with it. It is also not very good at really high pressure. You can use them as overheads on drum kits, you can put them in front of guitar amps to a point, not a screaming guitar amp, but brass players, no, just don't do that, because the pressure is far too great and you can actually end up stretching the ribbon. There's quite a few things that you need to be aware of with this mic in terms of handling it and putting it away very carefully. You should never bring it into contact with any iron filings or any bits of metal or old screws or whatever, because you essentially ruin that mic. Now, I'm going to raise the mic stand a little bit and tip the mic over, and then I'm going to play my violin, and you will hear basically the reason I bought it. Can't remember what I've just played, but here's the Coles. Now, of course, you can EQ things. You can EQ all the top end off the AKG, for example, but the Coles just represents that friendly voice of, the friendly voice of the BBC, and it does very, very well on strings as well. It's extremely good on the cello. So it just brings up all the mid-range that is a little bit lacking in some mics. That's not to say that the AKG is no good, because actually it's fantastic quality. But the Coles really does represent rather a change. Now I'm going to lower the mic stand, just put my violin to one side, and I'm going to play some acoustic guitar on this. So now I've got my Coles and my AKG lowered slightly. Of course, there are ways of recording an acoustic guitar. Lots of people point the mic at kind of 12th fret to get a good balance between the body and the strings of the guitar. So I'm just going to hold it up a bit. Here is the AKG first. And now for the Coles. So I'm just going to move slightly so that the Coles is pointing in the same sort of place. Here we go. Here's the Coles. So sometimes you can think, well, actually acoustic guitars, I want a little bit more of a jangly edge to it, but I play a lot of gypsy jazz stuff, and actually I found the Coles to be much better at getting the middle of that guitar, you know. So it gets much less of the plectrum sound and more of the body of the instrument. So there's just a quick comparison. You've heard vocals, violin and guitar. No, yeah, obviously three very common studio instruments. Now, of course, you can put one of these over a drum kit along with a stereo pair. Like if I had my 414s as overheads, I could put the Coles over the top as well, and you notice all the sort of body of that drum kit coming across. I haven't got my drum kit set up here, but I hope this gives you a really good idea of the Coles 4038.